At 3:18 a.m. on the 3rd of October 2025, a massive Chinese logistics convoy quietly entered an artillery depot near the Dnipro River on the outskirts of Kherson. More than 50 heavy trucks were loaded with ammunition, rockets, and fuel. Encircling them was a shell of steel ZBL-09 armored vehicles, HQ-7 launchers, and Type 95 anti-aircraft guns. When the industrial floodlights came on, the true scale of the operation emerged. The convoys began backing into underground storage bays, operating like a thoroughly trained force. But they didn't know that above them, Ukrainian reconnaissance UAVs were silently watching, relaying every encrypted frame to the command center in Kyiv. Within minutes, Ukrainian officers understood this wasn't a routine resupply. The enormous stockpile and dense defensive ring revealed one thing: the enemy was preparing a major offensive on the southern front. This depot was the lifeline feeding that entire plan, and it had to be cut. At 3:26 a.m., Ukraine's first response began. 6 Bayraktar TB-2 UAVs circled at nearly 10,000 feet, scanning every meter of ground with thermal and optical sensors. Under infrared, the entire depot layout, every truck, every air defense position came into sharp relief. The target map was completed in silence. A few minutes later, 2 old Soviet reconnaissance jets roared low over the area. This wasn't a real attack, but a perfect feint. They were programmed to generate enormous radar signatures, making the Chinese air defenses believe a large-scale bombing run was starting right overhead. Immediately, the HQ-17 crews locked on and salvoed multiple surface-to-air missiles, while Type 95 guns lit the sky. But those bombers were decoys. As the enemy wasted munitions on phantoms, Ukraine quietly gained something more valuable: the precise coordinates of the opponent's entire radar network. While the Chinese missile crews were busy reloading, Ukraine already had a complete air defense map. The radar emissions were exploited thoroughly. Every gun, launcher, and command post was marked. A flawless ruse forcing the enemy to expose itself and reveal the entire defensive bloodstream within minutes. While the opponent kept sweeping an empty sky, the real strike hit. At 3:32 a.m., dozens of small Ukrainian FPV drones surged in from multiple directions, flying below 120 feet and masking behind the terrain. They were too small for radar to catch, too fast for machine guns to track. The real battle began from the dark. The lead drone locked onto a target, a tanker holding more than 40 tons of diesel. The touch of a shaped charge triggered a massive blast. Flames towered hundreds of meters high, lighting the Kherson sky. The pressure wave swept clean the adjacent line of trucks, heralding hell at the depot's core. 2 more UAVs slammed into a truckload of 152mm shells. A second detonation followed the first, flinging hundreds of rounds into a firestorm. Steel containers burst like infernal fireworks. Shrapnel, shockwaves, and oily smoke merged as one. In seconds, the entire depot became a sea of fire. Chinese security teams fired back in desperation, but the targets were too small, too fast, and too close to the ground for their shots to matter. Amid the chaos, another phase of the plan began. From earthen trenches around the depot's rim, autonomous Ratel-S ground robots surfaced, using thermal sensors to pick out machine gun nests and camouflaged radar trucks. Coordinates were sent straight to Ukrainian artillery miles away. The first salvos crashed onto the enemy's hiding spots. The air defense feint had become a killing trap, pinning the entire Chinese force in place. At 3:39 a.m., the fire spread further. The weapons depot was now the epicenter of collapse. From afar, heavy-lift Ukrainian UAVs crawled low through the smoke, dropping swarms of small robots mongoose on the depot's outskirts. They touched down softly under ultralight parachutes, vanishing into tall grass only a few hundred meters from the Chinese tank positions. Night and smoke concealed the entire infiltration. With 6 road-gripping wheels, their infrared navigation quietly engaged. The mongooses sprinted off backpack-sized but deadlier than artillery shells. Ahead lay a row of Type 99, a tank's 55-ton beasts with 700mm of armor. But beneath that steel belly was exactly the weakness Ukraine was aiming for. Hidden by the receding thunder of explosions, the little robots crept up to each tank. They latched on with magnetic arms and set shaped charges right on the engine compartments. Tiny clicks sounded amid the chaos. When the engine started, the charges would detonate, destroying million-dollar machines from within without firing a single round. By 3:46 a.m., 8 Type 99, as were rigged without anyone noticing. Inside the depot, Chinese troops still thought they were just fighting UAVs. Meanwhile, the mongooses sent success signals back to control. Every time delay charge was ready, awaiting a single order: execute. At 3:52 a.m., a six-person Ukrainian special operations team began to move. Using suppressed all-terrain vehicles, they crossed a dry canal over 3 kilometers from the depot. Through night vision optics, everything appeared like daylight. They spoke not a word, only hand signals. Each knew their position, target, and timing. The raid was on a countdown. The first post appeared 2 sentries with QBZ-95 rifles. 2 operators closed in and squeezed MP5 SD triggers. The sound was swallowed by the night. The remaining 4 split, 2 toward the fuel yard holding 40,000 gallons of diesel, 2 toward the communication station. No one knew they were already inside the fence. They wired thermobaric charges to the fuel tanks, synchronized timers across the charges, and cut comms with mines on the transmission station. 2 detached teams breached the fence and planted charges on the comms vans. Everything was set without a single alarm. By 4:53, guard posts had been neutralized. At 4:12 a.m., the spearhead opened. Ukrainian armor surged from the tree line, led by Leopard 2 A6S with Bradley M2S behind. Overhead, an RQ-20 Pummer fed thermal video directly to a Caesar battery, 12 kilometers away, cueing precise opening fires for the infantry. Artillery roared, concentrating on mortar pits and pre-identified air defense sites. The fire and smoke carved a corridor. As the first Leopard crested the rise, its gun erased a machine gun bunker, while a Bradley pushed up, its 25mm suppressing the perimeter and cracking the defensive line in minutes of brutal fighting. By 4:18 a.m., Ukrainian armor was at the south gate, their guns pounding and breaking resistance. The Bradley slid in, wiping out blocking points as infantry poured through the gap. Combined tank action and precision fires turned a fortified line into scattered fragments within minutes. At 4:22, a psychological capstone hit. 2 MiG-29 seconds overflew at 20,000 feet, emitting signatures mimicking a cruise missile strike, forcing the enemy to look skyward. As radars slewed and the JY-300 EW system flooded the airwaves, Ukraine was ready to exploit the opening. That's how a Ram-2 loitering munition slipped in quietly from the west, controlled via an optical bypass line hidden on a farm 1.2 miles away, completely avoiding jamming. Its sole target, the mobile command vehicle coordinating the entire defensive response, and it would fall before anyone could react. At exactly 4:29 a.m., the Ram-2 dove and punched through the command vehicle. The blast opened a straight path into the underground depot behind it. Fire reached PHL-03 rockets and munitions, triggering a catastrophic chain reaction. Fire pits erupted, the ground shook, and within minutes, the entire facility became a volcanic cone of soot and smoke. A second strike destroyed the transceiver station, severing all communications. From the wreckage, secondary explosions rippled. Munitions cooked off, and the depot turned into a giant crater. By 4:35, the logistics hub was beyond recovery. The southern supply artery was completely severed. Amid the ashes, Ukrainian soldiers found 2 wounded men and managed to save them, an act showing battlefield principles still hold humanity. The mission marked a chained, multi-domain victory: information, electronic warfare, robotics, air power, and infantry in concert, crippling the opponent's southern offensive plan for a long time.